There comes a moment in every connection when you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, and stop carrying the whole relationship on your back. And the second you pull your energy back, something powerful happens. Her mask slips. Because when your effort fades, her truth appears. Some women step toward you with softness and accountability, and others reveal selfishness you never noticed before. Today's message isn't about games, it's about clarity. And nothing reveals a woman's real intentions more accurately than the silence created when you step away. Distance reveals honesty because it removes the noise from the connection and allows the truth to rise to the surface in ways closeness sometimes hides. When you are consistently present, always available, always pouring time and energy into someone, your effort becomes the dominant force that shapes the relationship. It becomes easy for the other person to coast on your investment, to mirror your commitment without ever having to reveal their own. But the moment you step back, even slightly, the dynamic shifts. You create a pause in the cycle, a moment of silence, and in that silence, the truth speaks. Distance forces both people to confront their real feelings because without constant communication or emotional reassurance, the connection has to sustain itself on what is genuinely there rather than what is being constantly supplied by one side. When you step back, you offer the other person a chance to show you what they are truly willing to give when you are no longer giving everything. If their feelings are authentic, they will naturally move toward you. They will lean in, initiate, show curiosity, and make an effort to close the gap, not because they are afraid of losing you, but because the connection matters to them. Their actions will align with the emotional investment they claim to have. Distance becomes a test, not of loyalty or love, but of sincerity. Someone who truly values you will not allow space to turn into separation. They will not let silence stretch without reaching across it. They will feel the shift in your energy, and instead of reacting with ego or indifference, they will respond with presence, accountability, and emotional awareness, showing that the bond exists independently of your constant effort. But when someone's interest is shallow, distance exposes it instantly. If they were only attached to what you provided, your attention, your validation, your availability, then the moment you step back, the connection loses its power. They feel no urgency to pursue, no motivation to understand what changed, no desire to close the emotional distance. They simply drift, not because they are strong or independent, but because they never had any real emotional depth in the first place. Distance reveals the difference between a person who values you and a person who values the benefits of having you. It shows who was aligned with you emotionally and who was simply enjoying the comfort of your presence without contributing anything meaningful to it. Their silence in response to your silence tells you everything their words never did. This is why distance is one of the most powerful truths in relationships. It removes performance and exposes instinct. It shows a person's natural response when they are not being influenced, guided, or supported by your constant effort. Some will move toward you with understanding, others will fade with indifference, and both reactions are revelations that closeness could never give you. Distance clarifies intentions, uncovers hidden dynamics, and allows you to see who is willing to stand with you when you stop standing in front of them, holding everything together through your presence. Alone, pulling back exposes attachment styles in a way words, promises, or emotional theories never can. When you are consistently present, constantly giving reassurance, and always taking the lead in the connection, you unintentionally give the other person a cushion where their attachment patterns remain hidden beneath your effort. Your presence becomes the emotional glue that keeps everything stable. But once you take a single step back, even slightly, the real framework of their emotional wiring begins to show. Every person operates from a subconscious pattern formed long before you entered their life, and these patterns determine how they respond to distance, silence, and uncertainty. When you pull back, you give those patterns room to surface, and their immediate behavior reveals whether they have a secure, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment, because space unlocks the truth that closeness often suppresses. A woman with a secure attachment style will respond to your withdrawal with curiosity rather than panic. She will not assume abandonment or betrayal, nor will she rush to punish you emotionally. Instead, she approaches the shift with maturity. She asks what changed, she checks in without accusation, and she communicates without losing her balance. The slight distance doesn't destabilize her or ignite insecurity. It simply encourages her to understand what is happening so the connection remains healthy. Her response is calm because her emotional foundation is stable. She does not depend on your constant presence for validation, and she does not interpret your silence as rejection. In her, you see a natural willingness to bridge the gap rather than react impulsively to it. And this is the beauty of secure attachment. It seeks clarity instead of chaos. But when your distance interacts with someone who has an anxious attachment style, the shift ignites a completely different emotional response. An anxious person feels an immediate spike of fear because your withdrawal triggers old wounds of not being enough, not being chosen, or being replaced. She may become hypervigilant, overthink every detail, or rush to contact you with urgency. Her mind fills the silence with insecurity, and her emotional state becomes flooded by the fear that your step back is the beginning of an ending. She may attempt to pull you back with intensity, or she may act clingy, overwhelmed, or overly emotional. It's not that she doesn't care deeply, it's that her attachment system interprets distance as danger, and her reactions reveal how deeply she depends on reassurance to feel safe. Then there is the avoidant attachment style, which becomes most visible when you pull back. Instead of moving toward you or seeking clarity, an avoidant woman often withdraws even further. Your distance gives her a sense of relief rather than concern, because she associates closeness with pressure and emotional intimacy with vulnerability. When you create space, she steps into it, not because she doesn't care, but because emotional closeness triggers discomfort she doesn't know how to manage. She may appear unbothered, detached, or indifferent, and she may not initiate at all, even if she feels something internally. Her avoidance is not a lack of emotion. It is a protective mechanism ingrained through years of learning that closeness can be overwhelming. Pulling back reveals this instantly because it allows her natural instinct, self-protection through distance, to take over. And for those with a disorganized or mixed attachment style, your withdrawal reveals chaos beneath the surface. They may respond with hot and cold behavior, reaching out intensely one moment and pulling away the next, unsure whether to seek closeness or avoid it. Their response is unpredictable because their emotional wiring is built on conflicting impulses. Pulling back exposes the instability they carry inside, showing you how deeply their past experiences affect their way of connecting. In every case, distance doesn't create these patterns. It simply reveals the truth that was already there. hidden beneath the comfort of your constant presence. Your silence tests the strength of her interest because silence removes the illusions that constant communication creates. When you are always the one initiating, always the one filling the space with conversation, affection, or attention, you unintentionally give her a comfortable rhythm to follow. She doesn't have to question anything because you are consistently present to keep the connection alive. But when you become quiet, when you stop over-explaining yourself, when you no longer feed the dynamic with your constant emotional energy, the entire relationship shifts. Silence becomes a mirror. It reflects how deeply she is invested, how much she values you, and how much effort she is willing to put in when she is no longer being carried by your presence. Your silence removes the safety net she has been relying on, and what she does in that space reveals the level of interest she truly holds. A woman who is genuinely interested will not allow silence to grow without bridging it. She will feel the change in your energy, and her response will come from care rather than ego. She will check on you, initiate conversations, or show subtle concern because she notices the absence of your usual presence. Not in a demanding or entitled way, but in a warm, emotionally available way. True interest shows up not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent actions, reaching out, asking how you are, showing that the connection matters even when it is not convenient. Her willingness to move toward you during silence is a reflection of emotional investment rather than habit. She doesn't wait for you to carry everything. She participates, she shows up, she fills the silence with presence instead of excuses. When a woman genuinely cares, she doesn't let distance grow unchecked. She leans in to protect the bond. But silence also exposes the superficial connections, the ones built on convenience, attention, or validation rather than genuine emotion. When a woman's interest is weak or temporary, your silence becomes an invitation for her to detach even further. She doesn't reach out, she doesn't check on you, she doesn't initiate, because her emotional stake was never deep enough to begin with. She may tell herself she's busy, she may pretend she didn't notice the distance, or she may simply shift her attention elsewhere without hesitation. These reactions reveal that her investment was only sustained when you were constantly feeding her the emotional energy she wanted. Once that energy stops, her involvement fades, not because she is independent or uninterested in relationships, but because she was never truly connected to you. Your silence strips away the illusion of mutual interest and shows you which women were aligned with your heart and which were simply passing through your life for their own emotional benefit. Silence also reveals the ego-driven responses. Some women become cold, distant, or dismissive when you stop communicating, not because they don't care, but because they refuse to be the one who reaches out first. They interpret your silence as a challenge, a power shift, or a threat to their sense of control. Instead of addressing it with curiosity or vulnerability, they retreat behind pride. Their reaction is not about love or interest. It is about maintaining emotional dominance. Your silence exposes who is capable of emotional intimacy and who is more attached to protecting their ego. It shows you who values connection and who values control. You can tell everything about a woman's level of seriousness by what she does when you're no longer the one keeping the dialogue alive. Silence doesn't create new truths. It reveals the ones that were hidden beneath the comfort of your words, and the reliability of your presence. Men often confuse attention with affection because attention is immediate, visible, and easy to interpret, while affection is subtle, consistent, and rooted in emotional depth rather than surface behavior. Attention feels flattering, it feeds the ego, it creates a sense of significance, and it gives a man the illusion that he is desired. But not all attention is born from genuine affection. Sometimes it comes from boredom, loneliness, convenience, or a woman's need for validation rather than a real desire to build a meaningful connection. When a woman gives attention, a man may assume she is emotionally invested, when in reality, she may only be invested in the temporary comfort his presence provides. And because men are often starved for emotional acknowledgement in their everyday lives, even small gestures, quick replies, playful conversations, or flirtatious energy can feel like emotional commitment, even though they are not the same thing. Affection requires vulnerability, consistency, and emotional intention. It is expressed not through sporadic moments of interest, but through steady investment over time. A woman who shows affection will be there even when the excitement fades, even when she is not entertained, and even when the circumstances are not ideal. She will care in ways that go beyond surface level attention, noticing your emotional shifts, asking about your well-being, showing consideration for your needs, and respecting your boundaries. Affection shows up in the quiet moments, the steady communication, and the effort she puts in when she has nothing to gain. It is rooted in emotional sincerity, not in the temporary thrill of interaction. But because many men rarely experience genuine affection, they are quick to elevate simple attention into something more meaningful than it actually is. Attention, on the other hand, is often transactional. A woman might give attention because she enjoys the entertainment you bring, the security of knowing someone is interested in her, or the emotional boost that comes from being desired. She may respond quickly, laugh at your jokes, flirt generously, or keep the conversation alive, not because she is building a connection, but because she likes the feeling of being wanted. Attention can be shallow, inconsistent, and dependent on her mood or circumstances. And once her temporary emotional needs are met, the attention fades. Many men misinterpret this pattern as emotional engagement, only to feel confused when the woman becomes distant, cold, or uninterested the moment the attention no longer serves her. The confusion happens because men often project their own emotional sincerity onto women. When a man is attentive, it usually reflects genuine interest, so he assumes the same about her. But for many women, attention is not a sign of affection. It is simply a momentary expression of curiosity or convenience. A woman who is truly affectionate will show care in ways that do not rely on excitement or instant gratification. She will communicate even on days she doesn't feel like talking. She will prioritize connection even when she is busy. She will invest even when it requires effort rather than pleasure. Affection has depth, while attention merely has presence. When men learn to differentiate between these two, they stop mistaking temporary validation for meaningful connection, and they start recognizing which women truly value them and which women only value the way they make them feel in the moment. Your absence forces her to confront her own behavior because your presence often shields her from seeing the consequences of how she treats you. When you are always available, always accommodating, always forgiving, she doesn't have to face the truth of her actions. She doesn't have to reflect on the tone she uses with you, the effort she gives, or the emotional energy she invests, because you are consistently there to absorb it, stabilize it, or overlook it. But the moment you step away and remove your emotional contribution, everything she once ignored begins to echo. Your absence creates a kind of silence she cannot escape. And in that silence, she becomes aware of the very things she never wanted to acknowledge. Without your presence softening the discomfort, she finally has to sit with the impact of her choices and recognize the parts of herself that your constant reassurance once protected her from. When you're around, she may convince herself that everything is fine, even if she hasn't been showing appreciation, effort, or emotional maturity. She tells herself you will always be there, always come back, always care more than she does. But when you withdraw, even slightly, the security she relied on begins to shake. Suddenly, the messages she didn't respond to feel heavier. The dismissive comments she made replay in her mind, and the lack of effort she put into the relationship becomes impossible to ignore. Your absence creates a vacuum, and into that space rushes all the accountability she tried to avoid. She begins to wonder whether she took you for granted, whether she pushed too hard, whether she ignored your needs for too long, and whether her behavior reflected the kind of partner she thought she was. Your absence becomes a mirror, revealing the patterns she never had to confront when you were overcompensating with your presence. For the first time, she sees the emotional weight you carried in the relationship. She notices the conversations you initiated, the stability you brought, the reassurance you gave, and the effort you maintained without expecting much in return. She realizes that the connection didn't survive on mutual effort. It survived on your consistency. And now, without that consistency anchoring the relationship, she is forced to recognize the imbalance she contributed to, but never admitted. Your absence breaks the illusion she lived in. It reveals how little she poured in compared to what she received. It exposes the entitlement she developed without meaning to, the emotional laziness she slipped into, and the way she allowed you to give more than she ever reciprocated. She doesn't see these things when you're present, because your presence allows her to avoid reflection. Your absence forces her to face herself without the comfort of your emotional support. And for many women, this realization is uncomfortable because it challenges the narrative they hold about themselves. She may see herself as caring, loving, loyal, emotionally intelligent, and yet your withdrawal reveals behaviors that contradict that self-image. She sees the coldness she used to justify as independence. She notices the passive-aggressive remarks she excused as honesty. She recognizes the lack of effort she brushed off as being busy. Without you there to normalize her behavior, she finally sees the truth of how she showed up in the relationship. Your absence exposes her emotional blind spots, forces her to acknowledge what she avoided, and pushes her to confront the parts of herself that only rise to the surface when she no longer has you present to cushion the impact of her own actions. Space creates clarity because it removes the emotional noise that constant interaction naturally brings. When two people are always engaged, talking, texting, reacting, responding, there is very little room to see what the connection truly looks like without the influence of routine or habit. Continuous communication can blur the line between genuine connection and simple familiarity. But when space enters the dynamic, it strips the relationship down to its core, revealing what remains when comfort, convenience, and constant reassurance are no longer present. Space becomes a filter. It separates what is real from what is imagined, what is mutual from what is one-sided, and what is strong from what is merely surviving. In the silence that space creates, truths rise to the surface that closeness often disguises, and you begin to see the relationship from a perspective that was impossible to access when you were immersed in it. When you give space, whether intentionally or naturally, you create an environment where emotions can settle rather than collide. In closeness, reactions happen instantly. Misunderstandings flare quickly, insecurities get triggered, and small concerns escalate because there is no breathing room between moments. But with space, perspective replaces impulsivity. You begin to see what you feel without the distortion of intensity. She begins to notice what she misses, what she values, and what she took for granted. And you begin to notice what you tolerated, what you overlooked, and what you carried by yourself. Space untangles the emotional threads that become knotted when two people are too intertwined too quickly. It gives both individuals the distance to evaluate what the connection truly means without the pressure of constant emotional stimulation. Space also makes a woman's intentions unmistakably clear. Without your presence filling every gap, you see whether she moves toward you naturally or drifts away effortlessly. You see whether she checks in, tries to reconnect, or shows subtle concern, or whether she becomes comfortable in the distance, revealing that her interest was dependent on your effort rather than her own. When you're always present, her behavior can be influenced by routine or expectation. But when space enters the dynamic, only genuine intention remains. If she cares, she steps forward. If she doesn't, she stays still. And this simple shift tells you more about her emotional investment than any conversation ever could. Space removes pressure and exposes sincerity by revealing who chooses you when choosing is no longer effortless. For you, space creates clarity about your own patterns as well. It shows you whether you were giving too much, chasing too hard, or carrying the emotional weight of the relationship alone. In the quiet that space creates, your intuition becomes louder. You start to see the red flags you ignored, the boundaries you bent, the compromises you made, and the energy you invested without receiving it back. You begin to understand yourself better, your needs, your expectations, and the version of yourself you became in the dynamic. Clarity comes not from confrontation, but from distance. When you step back, you see the relationship not through emotion, but through truth. You see her more clearly, and you see yourself more clearly. Space reveals whether the connection was mutual or maintained by you alone, whether the bond was deep or temporary, and whether the relationship had potential or was merely a lesson wrapped in attraction. In the end, everything you've learned about her through distance, silence, and space comes down to one universal truth. People reveal themselves when you stop carrying the relationship for them. When you pull back, when you stop initiating every conversation, when you remove the emotional effort she grew dependent on, the dynamic shifts in ways that speak louder than any words she has ever said. Her true intentions surface, her attachment patterns emerge, and her level of genuine affection becomes unmistakably clear. The woman who values you will move toward you with clarity, effort, and accountability, while the woman who was only enjoying the benefits of your presence will drift without hesitation. Your absence becomes the test she cannot bypass and the mirror she cannot avoid, showing her exactly who she has been in the relationship without the comfort of your constant presence. This entire journey teaches one powerful lesson. Space is not a punishment. It is a revelation. Your silence is not manipulation. It is a boundary. Your withdrawal isn't a tactic. It is awareness. The right woman won't be threatened by your distance. She will be inspired to match your effort, to communicate openly, and to show that her feelings were never dependent on your constant pursuit. The wrong woman will crumble, detach, or disappear because she only knew how to receive, not reciprocate. Through the clarity that space creates, you begin to see the difference between temporary attention and lasting affection, between emotional maturity and emotional convenience, between someone who is ready to grow with you and someone who was only meant to teach you a lesson about your own worth. And as these truths unfold, you also meet yourself more honestly. You see the habits you carried, the patterns you repeated, the energy you overgave, and the places where you abandoned your own needs to hold on to someone else. You recognize that your presence is powerful, your attention is valuable, and your heart deserves reciprocity, not excuses. Distance doesn't just reveal her, it reveals you. It shows you what you truly want from a connection and what you should never again tolerate. It teaches you that you never have to chase love, force affection, or beg for effort. Real connection survives space. Real interest grows through silence. And real love meets you halfway without needing to be pushed, convinced, or carried by your effort alone.